When you're talking to these people and you learn their tale of woe, I want you to think in the back of your mind, as you're talking to them, who are the potential defendants? Who are the people who may have caused this injury? Is it an attending physician? Is it a doctor in training known as a resident? Is it a newbie, a doctor who just graduated medical school, who now is working in their first year of residency called an internship? And by the way, in case you don't know, that is one of the worst times in July to be a patient in a hospital, because you get all these newbies coming in and they are on a huge learning curve. It's true. And so they are all learning. They know very little in terms of actual clinical medicine by the time they're an intern. And so, if you happen to be a patient, July, August, September, be very careful and ask yourself, who is rendering this care? And another thing you want to ask yourself is, who's responsible here? Okay, these are all employees. What do we know about the law and employees? Well, there's got to be an employer, right? So what do we know about vicarious liability? Very good. Thank you, sir. That's exactly right. We know that the employer is legally responsible for the acts of its employees. So now that you're being told what's happening, and now you learn that it's a nurse or a technician or a doctor in the hospital. And now you're thinking, okay, these people may be individually responsible, but who's ultimately responsible for their care and treatment? The hospital. And why is that important? Because if you only bring in to sue one of them or two of them, you might be missing some key players involved. You might be missing some deep pockets. You might be missing the real culpable parties who could actually pay if, in fact, we're able to prove our case, that we are slightly more likely right than wrong, that what was done was true. Okay? So always ask yourself, was this a professional corporation the doctor was working in? Or were they a hospital employee? And I have to tell you, the patient is not going to know these distinctions. And in all likelihood, neither will you. This takes some digging, and even then you may not know the ultimate answer as to whether or not they were employed by the hospital or employed by a faculty practice or a private medical group. That takes some digging, and you should not be expected to know that, but keep that in the back of your mind. Who is actually responsible? What else do you need to know? You need to know, where's the venue? Where might we bring this case if they have a valid case? Venue is critically important. So if the patient lives in Manhattan, but the treatment happened up in the Bronx, you now have a choice of where to bring your lawsuit. And are you going to bring it in Manhattan or are you going to bring it in the Bronx? If this happened in Queens and the treatment occurred and the patient lives in Brooklyn, again, you have options. If the treatment and the patient lives in Brooklyn, guess what? It's happening in Brooklyn. This is important so that now, when you make the decision about whether or what to do with this case, what to do with this possible case, it will be helpful that if you decide to refer it out to an attorney, now you can have an educated conversation with him or her and say, listen, here's the venue that I think this case is going to take place in. And then you also should be focused on what type of witness will this person make if this case goes to trial 2 or 3 years down the road. That is critically important. Your impression of this person makes a huge difference. Why? I'll tell you why. Because if you get the sense in talking to somebody for a few moments that they are nasty, they are obnoxious, they are vengeful, how do you think they're going to appear in front of a jury 2 or 3 years down the road? You think they're really going to get that much better? You think they're now going to turn into a soft, sweet cupcake? Oh yes, thank you so much. Unlikely. They may improve, but those first impressions are very important. Now, on the other hand, if it's an 85-year-old grandma and she's sweet as pie, again, these impressions will help you determine whether or not there may be a case, because there are attorneys that I know, myself included, who will reject a case if the client is nasty, if they're obnoxious, if they are refusing to accept legal advice, if they are antagonistic and fighting with me every step of the way. I don't care what kind of case they have. I now have to live with this person for the next 2 or 3 years. And if I know at the outset that this person is going to be trouble, there's the door, politely. Thank you, have a nice day, you better find somebody else. Okay? So those choices will come up. So that's why I ask you to keep in the back of your mind, what type of witness will this person make in front of a jury?